We all remember this iconic scene from episode 19 of One Piece where we see Zoro's backstory for the first time. But did you know that this scene was completely changed in the 4Kids version of One Piece? So I scrubbed the entire internet and watched over 1,000 episodes of One Piece to find 201 facts I'm sure you didn't know about. Like, did you know that Joy Boy had a connection with Fishman Island over 800 years ago? From the hints we've gotten in the story, Joy Boy wanted the fishmen to live on the surface with humans. We don't get to know this until Robin finds an apology from Joy Boy on a poneglyph. He didn't just have a close relationship with the people of Fishman Island, but he also had a close relationship with Poseidon, one of the 3 ancient weapons. They were so close, in fact, that Joy Boy was supposed to be reborn after an unknown number of years right alongside Poseidon. Although we definitely know that Joy Boy wasn't all about failures. Heck, we know directly from the Pirate King himself that Joy Boy was a great man who had loads of treasure in his belongings. We have no idea what this treasure is. It could be a vault of lollipops for all we know, but we know from Roger, who's theorized to have found it, that whatever it is was massive. That's not the only amazing thing Joy Boy has done. For one, he's also been to Final Island. That's right. Previously, we thought that only Gol D. Roger, the former Pirate King, had ever stepped foot on the island. But it seems like he was several centuries too late. That's also where he found the massive treasure Joy Boy hid, which means that not only did Joy Boy make it to the island, he pretty much claimed it as his own. So Joy Boy's amazing and all, but where is he? When's he coming back? Well, in Oden's flashback, it's revealed that Joy Boy will return in 20 years to shake up the entire world. As many fans have rightly guessed, that time seems to be now, and it's closing in pretty fast. Although we don't know who he'll be reincarnated as or how he'll make his return, it doesn't take a super genius to make a guess. And while we do know a few things about Joy Boy, we mostly don't know anything else about him. Like for instance, we have no idea how old Joy Boy is or when and how he died. Ultimately, his eventual reveal in the story would probably turn the world of One Piece on its head. And while we don't know things about Joy Boy, we definitely know things about the main characters, sometimes a long time before those things even happen. For instance, did you know that Oda referenced Luffy's Gear 5 all the way back in the Skypiea arc? At the end of the arc, when all the characters celebrate, Luffy strikes a pose that's a bit too familiar. On top of that, have you noticed that Luffy's origin is crazy? Similar to Elongated Man from the DC Comics. Both got their stretchy powers after eating a weird special fruit, and went on to be lovable and occasionally airheaded superpowered individuals. It's not a one-for-one recreation, but it's definitely similar enough to raise a few eyebrows. Even though we can't confirm the connection between Elongated Man and Luffy, we do know why Oda gave him these specific powers, and it's not for the reason you might think. The real reason Oda chose Luffy's rubber power was so he would have a ridiculous ability to play around with, no matter how serious things get. Like, imagine the most intense battle with the most tense moments, and you got this kid blowing up his fist like a balloon. That's not the only thing that Oda chose to give Luffy. Another thing you notice about the Straw Hat Captain is that he's pretty similar to the former Pirate King Gol D. Roger. Both of them have all forms of haki. They're both fearless, ambitious, and determined. And we of course can't forget about the Straw Hat. He may be more of a myth at this point, but Roger is definitely more of an influence in the series than we realized. One thing I'm pretty sure he didn't have in common with Roger is the fact that Luffy never got sick and has no idea what it feels like. I wonder why. That energy helped him with his legacy, and he sure has one hell of a legacy. Did you know that Luffy is the youngest member of the Worst Generation and the 4 Emperors? That's pretty impressive for a kid who's just trying to live his best life and enjoy the adventures around him. And you can't get that kind of position without being as straightforward as he is.
裏切んのか
いや
He's so straightforward, in fact, that in the manga, Luffy has the fewest number of thought bubbles throughout the whole series. That's because he always says what he wants when he wants, so there's no need for thoughts. One thing I'm sure we're all happy Luffy didn't talk about is a more embarrassing fact. In an Ask Me Anything segment in a magazine, Oda confirmed that Luffy can stretch his slong just like the rest of his body. That's a piece of information I'm sure you're definitely imagining right now. You're welcome. Back to more normal facts. Did you know why Luffy wants to become the Pirate King? The real reason is because Luffy thinks the Pirate King is the most free person in the world. The funny thing is the fact that Luffy already lives a free, outgoing life, going on adventures with his pirate crew. On top of that, did you know that Luffy can predict the future? Well, not really, but he's been pretty close. You see, Luffy has made many decent drawings, but all of them seem to predict things that are gonna happen. Like this picture of a weird mermaid that actually ends up showing when they meet the fishmen. Luffy isn't the only person who accidentally predicts the future. Zoro actually accidentally predicts the fact that Sanji is a prince. We all know that Zoro never calls Sanji by his name.
Robin! Moron. What?
One of the many nicknames Zoro has picked for the crew's chef is Prince. But this time, Sanji has a very different reaction than usual. This could be foreshadowing of Sanji's backstory. Still on the predicting the future train, Usopp also has a bit of future sight himself. We all know Usopp loves his lies, but some of his lies end up being predictions of the future. Like all the way back in the beginning when Usopp walks around his village claiming that the pirates are attacking. It turns out that the Black Cat pirates were actually in the village and planned to attack. But Usopp's lies are more important to his character than you think. They're so important so far that every single thing about him is a reference to his love of lying. For instance, his birthday is April 1st, the only day of the year where everyone is trying to catch you off guard with a lie. Even his nose is a reference to how Pinocchio's nose grows when he lies. Except, unlike Pinocchio, his nose stays long no matter what. There's also the fact that Usopp longed to be a real pirate someday, just like Pinocchio hoped to be a real boy. The similarities are there, and while saying that Pinocchio inspired Usopp is a further stretch than his wooden nose, it's fun to see these kinds of coincidences. Lying isn't his only talent though. Usopp has a talent for making scary faces. Like this scene where Usopp makes a face so scary that it makes a girl pass out on the spot. It was just an effort to shake off the Marines, but if my face was enough to make someone scream and faint, I'll be rethinking my life choices up to that point. But his scary face isn't just a random weird drawing, because his face takes inspiration right from a real life structure. His scary face was modeled after the Goa Gajah cave in Indonesia, and I gotta say, it does the job pretty well. I mean, I definitely wouldn't go in there. He doesn't just lie and mess things up though. For all the hate that Usopp gets, people tend to forget some of the good that he's done with the Straw Hats. For instance, he taught the residents of the island of Skypiea how to use rubber bands in useful ways, so they made a statue of him in an amusement park called Rubber Bands Land. That, and the fact that Usopp makes an appearance in Luffy's wanted poster right in the background. That's something that was mentioned in the show, so yeah, who cares about that? But did you know he also shows up in Zoro's wanted poster? Maybe just being there bumped the bounty up just a bit. Speaking of Zoro, did you know that Zoro is named after a real-life pirate? His last name, Roronoa, is inspired by Francois Olanoa, a real-life pirate known as the most savage pirate of the Caribbean. And knowing just how OP Zoro can get, that's a pretty spot-on inspiration. And he's definitely done a lot of awesome things, like when he kills Helmeppo's wolf with a quick slash while he's running riot in town. Well, just in the manga at least. In the anime, Zoro only throws a stool at the wolf, and it remains unconfirmed whether or not the wolf is dead. That's not the only badass thing he does, of course. There's also that time he allowed himself to take a hit just to show off his durability in the Orangetown arc. In the manga, Zoro let Kabaji hit his wound, but in the anime, Zoro hits his own wound, still giving the same effect. But one is way more impactful. It's not always the badass scenes that get rewritten. There's also some interesting choices in the show itself. For instance, have you noticed that Zoro's name is sometimes misspelled as Zolo? That might be because the pronunciation of the letter R in Japanese is sometimes pronounced as L, making it easy to mix up the two. 4Kids doesn't have an excuse, however, because they decided to stick with the name Zolo to avoid copyright issues from another fictional character named Zoro. That's a pretty huge leap, and I'm pretty sure the creators of a film from the 90s weren't planning to sue them for an anime adaptation, but copyright claims have certainly been made for less. As far as sensible decisions go for 4Kids though, because since they acquired One Piece, they've done a lot of nonsensical things to make it child-friendly, like censoring weapons. That would be fine if it was good censorship, but some of the redraws make little to no sense. Even blood isn't safe. 4Kids managed to get rid of every trace of blood in the show, replacing it with white liquids that might not be much better. When will these studios learn that white stuff spilling everywhere is not kid-friendly? Besides, it doesn't really change anything. The violence in the scene still remains the same. It just makes you wonder what the point of it even was. Blood isn't the only thing they censored either. Apparently kids can't handle the thought of alcohol, so 4Kids censored every depiction of alcohol in the series by changing its color and making sure the characters clarified that it's juice as many times as they could. That massive change in dialogue most likely negatively affected the quality of the story, but it was being made for kids anyway, so I doubt much was missed. And while those somewhat make sense if you really squint at it, this next one really doesn't, because for some reason, 4Kids doesn't like Luffy's smile. That's right, his usual open-mouthed grin is replaced by an odd-looking slim-mouthed grin, which is probably worse for kids all around. And as if it can't get any worse, 4Kids changed Sanji's cigarette into a lollipop and got rid of Smoker's cigars. Smoker, you know, the guy named after his habit of smoking. What's worse is, they left the smoke from the cigars in the scene, making Smoker look like he's producing smoke kinda like my PC when I try to run Valorant on the highest graphics. And while most of these are nonsensical, this one makes at least a bit more sense. A scene where Sanji smokes as a child is removed from the anime. That's probably the only censorship decision that makes sense. You don't want children thinking smoking looks cool after all. That's enough sensibility though, because this next one is the weirdest of them all. They removed scenes where characters were foaming at the mouth. And for all my research, I honestly can't tell you why. Because foam doesn't really have any special meaning, and this decision makes the least sense out of all of them. Their censorship decisions are really baffling, and even the ones that have reasons behind them still make no sense. Like back in the very first set of episodes where Zoro was left to die by the Marines, the little girl that brings him rice balls now brings cookies instead. I guess culturally, Western children have no idea what rice balls are, so maybe this works so it can be more relatable. But then explain to me why Ace was completely removed from an entire scene for no reason. No kidding, but in a scene where he's chilling while Sanji cooks in the kitchen, Ace is just scrubbed off the face of the earth, never to be seen again. Maybe they have a thing against blue-haired shirtless men? Alright, that's enough bad decisions. Let's talk about the good stuff, like the fact that Luffy has appeared in a fashion magazine. He appeared specifically in men's Nunno fashion magazine 24-year history, and his clothes were designed by Shinichi Mitamata. But magazines aren't the only place that reference the popular series. One Piece is always getting referenced in famous media, from anime to Western cartoons to even the damned Olympics. One Piece really is making waves in every form of media, and you gotta wonder if Aichiro Oda knew that his works would spread this far. One memorable example is Attack on Titan and its One Piece Easter egg in Season 3, Episode 41. Where someone wears Luffy's iconic straw hat with a red band around it. There are also twigs sticking out the top of the hat, which could be a reference to Chopper, but that's a bit of a stretch for sure. Looks like it was trendy to show off One Piece, and you know where there's a trend? There's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and the manga didn't fail to take advantage of the hype in its 8th part, which has a panel in it with a lot of One Piece merch. And if we're talking about references, then you gotta expect Gintama to be in there, and you'd be right. And we've got an example right here where Gintoki dresses exactly like Luffy, even down to the iconic chest scar. There's also other references in Gintama, like right here where Gintoki eats a familiar looking fruit that even makes his hair grow wildly. And the references don't stop there. Even Assassination Classroom gets in on it too, with a One Piece reference right here, as Karma plays a One Piece game on his Nintendo DS right in the middle of class. We've seen many references in Assassination Classroom, from Naruto to even Fist of the North Star, but this One Piece reference takes the cake for being the most blatant. And even in Good Luck Girl, they aren't even trying to hide it, as one of the characters dresses up as Luffy for a tennis match and even goes as far as to stretch her arms for a Gomu Gomu no Receive. I gotta say, if I could stretch my limbs and get better at sports, I sure would too. Even Dragon Ball Super has a One Piece reference, with Krillin's ringtone being the literal opening theme of the show. The specific theme is We Are from the first season, specifically during the East Blue Saga. The fact that Dragon Ball has shown love to One Piece from all the way back then really shows how old their mutual respect for each other is. But it only gets more shameless from here. In the anime Tower of God, there's a dollar store knockoff of Zoro named Full Black that's supposed to be a master swordsman in that series. While we can be sure our green-haired second in command would mop the floor with him, we can't be sure that it isn't Zoro himself, considering the number of times he gets lost. Even Fairy Tail couldn't resist sneaking in One Piece characters, with Luffy being right in a scene in Fairy Tail staring up at the sun. This one goes both ways too, because One Piece has also referenced Fairy Tail multiple times, with some of the most noticeable ones being Luffy, who in an attempt to mask his identity, Luffy adopts the name Lucy upon entering the Corrida Coliseum. But I guess this one gets a pass since Oda is also great friends with Fairy Tail's creator, Hiro Mashima. In fact, their friendship is old and great enough they shared multiple sources of inspiration with each other over the years. So of course, at the end of the day, there would be a massive number of similarities between them. Food Wars takes it a step further, not just referencing Nami from One Piece, but also a ton of other girls from other anime, including Arina Yelovic from Assassination Classroom, Shimizu Kyoko from Haikyuu, Amatori Chika from World Trigger, Kagura from Gintama, and Kirasaki Chidoge from Nisioki. The references keep coming, like here with the main character of Himoto Umura-chan being a huge fan of One Piece and always carrying around a figure of Chopper. She's such a fan too that multiple One Piece manga can occasionally be spotted in her room. Talk about Die Hard. Now, there's probably a million manga and anime at this point that have referenced One Piece at one point or another. But what about Western media? Well, The Simpsons took their shot at a reference of One Piece in one of their unique opening sequences that had each character representing a character from a different anime. Teen Titans Dragon's Go as well also referenced One Piece with an entire episode dedicated to the gang wanting to become pirates, while Robin sports Luffy's iconic outfit and straw hat. Heck, forget that even their ship is a direct replica of the Going Merry. It doesn't even get close to stopping there though. The creator of The Amazing World of Gumball has admitted that they're obsessed with anime and that their show wouldn't be complete without a One Piece reference with an iconic reaction moment of Gumball and Darwin that looks identical to a similar reaction from One Piece characters. Just look at that expression. Alright, let's not make it look like One Piece is out here inspiring the entire universe. Oda has also taken inspiration from other places for his characters. We all know that Luffy is based off of Goku, but did you know that Enel, the tyrannical former god of Skypiea, is based off Eminem? That's a sentence I'm sure you didn't expect to hear today, huh? Well, better believe it, because Oda is apparently a huge Eminem fan. And it's not just people either. Islands in One Piece were modeled after real islands, with places like Impel Down being modeled after Alcatraz in the USA, and Dressrosa modeled after Park Güell in Spain. Speaking of Spain, did you know that Don Quixote do Flamingo's name comes from the famous Spanish book Don Quixote? I guess Oda knows his worldwide literature. Still looking at references, there are video games that also reference One Piece. Assassin's Creed references the Thriller Bark, which is one of the largest ships in the world of One Piece, and easily the most overpowered ship in the game. World of Warcraft also references One Piece with a wearable item called Akainu's Absolute Justice, which can shoot out magma-based attacks. If that isn't a good reference, I don't know what is. Sometimes, the idea to add a One Piece reference isn't even planned out, it just happens out of respect. Like the time Oda admitted that he loved Pokemon Go, so they added a special Luffy hat into the game that looks adorable on Pikachu. Enough about other video games. Let's talk about One Piece's very own video game and its incredible attention to detail, like the fact that Buggy the Clown's claw marks show up on Luffy's hat in the video game. If you didn't know, there's an episode of One Piece where Luffy's hat gets stabbed by Buggy, and to see that detail in the game is actually amazing. That's not even the most impressive thing about the game. Did you know that there's a place in the video game that's a copy of a manga cover? This game has so many Easter eggs, but I'm not going to spoil them all here for you. Maybe another video though. Games aren't always all fun, however. Roshio can tell you that firsthand. In the anime, a lot of the most brutal actions are toned down for TV viewers. But did you know that in the manga, Bellamy beats up Roshio and sets him on fire after losing a game? That sounds gruesome, but it's now Buggy the Clown holding one of his crewmates in front of a cannon and killing him with a buggy ball. In the anime, he just chokes him for making fun of his nose before letting him go. That's not even the worst of it. Still in the manga, we all know how much Bartolomeo respects Luffy. He respects him so much, in fact, that he cuts off a guy's tongue because he was making fun of Luffy. Another toned-down scene is a moment in the manga where 3 soldiers shot at Nojiko while aiming for Nami. In the anime, it's only the Marine captain that fires a shot. Still gruesome, but I'd rather take 1 bullet than 3. Or you know what? None at all. That's not the end of the toned-down violence in the anime. There's another moment in the manga on the island called Little Garden. Oda shows Dory and Brogy cutting off a dinosaur's head getting chopped off. But in the anime, we only see the reflection. The brutality doesn't stop there though. There's a scene where Mr. 3 tries to test his devil fruit powers by cutting off Brogy's hands and feet with swords. As usual, this is toned down in the anime to only be shackles. It's not all violence, however. Sometimes things are a bit more steamy. For instance, did you know that while Vivi was posing as Miss Wednesday, she was supposed to have a more suggestive design? Her outfit was supposed to have circular patterns to highlight her figure more, but the manga later changed it to the straight lines we see today. You two might not like the more enticing stuff, so we'll stick to plain old violence for now. Like the time Zeph had to break off his leg to feed Sanji and survive starvation on a deserted island. Or the time a group of villagers in the manga were ready to end it all because they couldn't wait for any more food and wanted to die quicker. This moment was scrubbed entirely from the anime, as it'd definitely be too gruesome to show people dying from starvation on TV. Alright, those are a bit too wild, so let's go to a more familiar one. Did you know that Whitebeard's injuries were toned down in the anime? In the manga, a punch from Akainu was enough to blow up half of Whitebeard's face, but in the anime, only half of his mustache gets shaved off. Still an equally great tragedy in my opinion though. That was a beautiful mustache. Speaking of Whitebeard, did you know that his crew's pirate symbol had to be changed? Yeah, the old design was a little too similar to a certain dictator's followership, so Oda's editor told him to change it. Imagine a world where Oda didn't listen to his editor. Another little nerf in the anime is the fact that the middle finger is removed. That's right, your favorite characters can't flip you the bird unlike they do in the manga, and that's quite frankly devastating. Also, did you know that Krillin has the same voice actor as Luffy? That's just another way Dragon Ball and One Piece overlap. What makes it even crazier is the fact that Luffy is voiced by a woman in both the English and Japanese dubs. And then in walks my man Zoro, boasting a total of 6 different voice actors over the series run, with 2 of them being child actors, while the rest were adult actors playing the famed swordsman. That's almost as many as the number of swords he's had, which since my last count comes up to a total of 7 swords Zoro has burned through in the series. He starts off with unnamed dual katanas that he uses towards the beginning of the story. These are easily the weakest swords Zoro has ever wielded, and they easily shattered in a battle with Dracula Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman. And since we're talking about Zoro, what's up with the fact that in all 1,000 episodes of One Piece, Zoro has never once called Sanji by his real name? Sanji isn't a saint either, because he's called Zoro every name in the book he can think of, with Maramo Head being the one that seemed to stick with Zoro the most.
Marimo.
Speaking of names, did you know that Sanji's name was originally supposed to be Naruto? It would have been a great name for the cook, but this little-known manga series by the same name was coming up at the time, so Oda decided to change his name to Sanji. That's not the only thing about Sanji that changed during release. Sanji was also originally supposed to be the crew's sniper, not the cook. He probably would have rocked the cannon, but I'm sure we all prefer him in the kitchen. He'd never shoot at a boat that had a woman on it. Speaking of design, have you ever wondered about Sanji's hair? It used to cover his left eye, and so many fan theories came up that Sanji's hair now covers his right eye. Turns out, there was never anything special about it anyways. Fans just love to theorize. That's not the only design choice about Sanji that's interesting. Have you noticed that Sanji's eyebrows run in the family? Just take a look at his siblings next time they show up on screen. And still talking about siblings, did you know that Sanji is the only Straw Hat that has biological siblings? The rest are either adopted siblings or friends close enough to call themselves siblings. Even though they're just friends, the bond is real between Luffy and his brothers. Too bad Brook never gets to see it because he's the only Straw Hat who's never met one of Luffy's brothers. He's in no way losing though, because Oda confirmed a random fact that if the Straw Hats had a 50-meter race, Brook would come in first place. Only in the short races, because according to him, Brook doesn't have much weight to carry. That's pretty impressive for an old-timer. Brook is 88 years old, making him the oldest member of the Straw Hats by far. The youngest is Chopper. Even at his age, he values style. That's why he never let anything touch his afro. He wants to protect his afro because his body has stopped growing. So if the afro goes, it's never coming back. His teeth seem to grow back just fine though. Inconsistencies aside, another reason is because when he meets Laboon again at the Twin Capes, he wants to make sure Laboon recognizes him. His most recognizable feature is, of course, his afro. Pretty cute, right? Another fun fact about Brook is his favorite food is lemons, because he had no cheeks to make a sour face. The only person that can ever enjoy such a thing. Too bad we don't see him all the time in the series, but he's always there with his crew, like the time Sanji, Nami, Chopper, and Brook appear as toys in the Dressrosa arc, while the real ones are MIA. I wonder if there's a brand that made those toys, like the literal clothing company inside the One Piece anime. Have you noticed that a lot of the clothes in the story have the same logo on them? Oda seems to be pretty fashionable himself. I mean, he has a $2,000 lighter after all. It's called the ST DuPont Limited Edition Sleeping Mermaid Premium Lighter, and it's probably the most expensive lighter I've ever seen. I feel like there's a rabbit hole there to go down. But do you know why it's called the Sleeping Mermaid? Well, if you look closely, you can see that the lighter actually depicts a woman sitting down and hugging her knees. It looks vaguely similar to how Pudding was sitting down crying after she let him go. That's not the only collaboration Oda has done though. Oda has partnered up with Akira Toriyama to make a manga where Luffy and Goku hang out. So yes, all that fan fiction is now canon. Luffy and Goku know each other and are friends. That must have been an amazing day for Oda, considering that Luffy is based off of Goku. But did you know that Luffy's name is based off of Sun Wukong being a monkey, just like Goku is based off the same character? Their similarities go way beyond the surface. It's not just Goku that's an inspiration for Luffy, but the whole of Dragon Ball was a major inspiration for One Piece. The story and characters are all inspired loosely by Dragon Ball. But that's not the only interesting inspiration for Luffy. Did you know that Luffy is actually what Oda's ideal son would be like? With that in mind, it makes sense why Oda secretly sneaks himself into the show. In chapter 44 of the manga and episode 16 of the anime, Oda drew himself as a pirate in the background of a crowd scene. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's there. And that's not the only thing he snuck into One Piece. Have you ever noticed this strange recurring panda in the background of most scenes? He's secretly drawn a character named Panda Man, who was originally designed for the Kinnikuman character creation contest in the background of a lot of iconic scenes. And since we're talking about things sneaking their way into One Piece, did you know that Pokemon is canonically a thing in One Piece? That's right. In picture books confirmed by Oda to exist in the world, he says that some popular titles include Pokemon, Monkey Ball, and Marco-san. Now, it makes you wonder what Luffy's favorite starter Pokemon is. That's not all in terms terms of cameo appearances, Goku isn't the only one that's enjoyed lunch with the Straw Hats. Even Naruto has made an appearance in One Piece. In episode 769, Luffy's crew are excited about meeting a ninja who can clone themselves and summon a toad. Take a guess at who that might be. It's also heavily implied that Luffy's Gear 3 form is based off of Choji's expansion ability, and Absalom's invisibility powers were also influenced by a minor Naruto character. It's clear the two series have history, and that's why when Naruto reached its end in 2014, Oda paid tribute by bringing Naruto and Luffy together for a friendly meal. Not every character in One Piece is that deep though. There's a few joke characters in the show, like Whitebeard's dog. The dog was an answer to fans' questions about whether Whitebeard's mustache could be used as a boomerang. Oda answered by saying that he uses it to play fetch with his dog Stefan whenever they go on a walk. Another pretty good recurring joke is Chopper's bounty and how ridiculously low it is. Just 50 berries. Although after a while, it does get a massive boost to a whole 100 berries. Fans theorize that the reason Chopper's bounty is so low is to avoid people turning in stuffed animals or anything that remotely looks like our favorite humanoid deer for a quick buck. Now on to more other Easter eggs, like this literal giant egg on Roger's ship. What the heck is up with that thing? And why is it always there? With all the references we brought up, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a giant Yoshi egg. Also, have you ever noticed that Spandam's mask is inspired by WWE star Mankind? Look at them side by side. They're practically identical. That's not the only wrestling inspiration. The Funk Brothers are inspired by a real-life wrestling tag team also named Funk Brothers, Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk. Also, have you ever noticed that every time we see Bharati, it's bigger than the last time? I guess the Straw Hats visiting, turning it into a tourist hotspot. Good for them. Oda has also revealed that the Straw Hats come from all over the world. According to him, Luffy would be Brazilian, Zoro Japanese, Nami Swedish, Usopp African, Chopper Canadian, Nico Robin Russian, Frankie American, Brook Austrian, and Jinbei Indian. We also know what jobs they would have if they were in the real world. Luffy would be a firefighter, Zoro a police officer, Nami an elementary school teacher, Usopp a graphics designer, Sanji a salon stylist, Chopper a grade school teacher, Robin a flight attendant, Frankie a pilot, and Brook a detective. Alright, we've had good vibes for a while now, so let's talk about some more interesting ones, like how Ace tattooed the names of the most important people in his life on his arm. You'd think the ASCE on his arm was a misspelling of his name, but it's an acronym for Ace, Sabo, Crybaby, which was the nickname for Luffy, and Edward Newgate, the real name of Whitebeard. And that would explain why Ace crossed out the S in his tattoo, because he thinks Sabo is dead. If only he knew that we've seen Sabo earlier than his debut in episode 583, all the way back in chapter 96, where we see 3 children playing together. It's never explicitly stated, but these 3 are definitely Ace, Luffy, and Sabo. Did you also know that Ace shares his birthday with Oda? New Year's Day, January 1st. Ace's father, Goldie Roger, was born a day earlier on December 31st. Since birthdays are pretty important in the show, let's keep going. Did you know that Luffy's birthday on May 5th is also Children's Day? This is a direct reference to his energetic and childlike personality. It's not just the birthdays either. Oda loves hiding things in interesting places. For instance, the names of the Straw Hats have hidden meanings. We already know about Luffy and Zoro, but what about Sanji? Well, San in his name is Japanese for 3, referencing that he's the 3rd member to join the group, while G means compassion, referencing his legendary simp attitude. Nami's name also has a hidden meaning. It's written as Nanamitsu, which directly translates to 3 sevens or 777, and hints at Nami loving money. Even Whitebeard and Blackbeard's name have a hidden meaning. When you take Whitebeard's first name Edward and Blackbeard's last name Teach, they come together to make the real-life Blackbeard's name Edward Teach. That's not the only 2 names that have a hidden meaning. The 2 girls following Blackbeard around are called Tori and Maki, which together is Torimaki, roughly meaning gold digger. Despite Luffy being bad at names, he treats his crew like family by not giving them weird nicknames. He actually takes the extra effort to remember their names. That doesn't stop Nami from raging out against Luffy and going as far as poking him in the eye with a needle. After she fixes Luffy's hat for what has to be the 100th time, Luffy punches a hole through it by accident, forcing her to stick a hole in him instead. Thank goodness she didn't do that with her old design though. Nami originally had a robotic arm and leg, which looks really cool, but imagine a strong robot hand pushing a needle through your eye. That's not the only interesting fact about Nami. Did you notice that her blue tattoo in the anime doesn't have color in the manga? This has left fans wondering what the actual color of her tattoo would be. Have you also noticed that Nami wore clothing that predicted future characters? Before the Water 7 arc, Nami wears a shirt with a cyborg design, clearly predicting Frankie joining the crew. Also, during the Thriller Bark arc, arc, Nami wears a shirt with a skull and crossbones pattern. Soon after, Brooke joins the crew. Another reason why Nami's outfits might be so special is because her outfits are inspired by Oda's wife. Anytime Oda's looking for inspiration for a new outfit for Nami, he just takes a glance at his wife's fashion choice. That's made even more ironic by the fact that Oda met his wife while she was cosplaying as Nami at a convention. And maybe that's why Nami gets special treatment sometimes. Like, did you know that Nami is the only one of the crew to ask someone to become a crew member before Luffy? She recruited Chopper herself. But it's not like she's only out here living her best life. Did you know that Nami wrote charts for Arlong and Pen so much that they got soaked with her blood? That's some dedication right there. Still talking about Nami's past, did you know that Nami and Nochiko were found by Bellemere in the Okio Kingdom? That's Tokyo in reverse. Nami's naming sense is as bad as Luffy's, but just like Luffy, she calls everyone in the Straw Hats by their first name. Well, except Sanji, who she calls more politely by his last name for some reason. It's not like they have a bad relationship, however. Sanji once got injured while saving Nami, and despite his wounds, he refuses to get blood on her clothes. Simping or chivalry? I'll let you decide in the comments. That's not the only cool thing Sanji does either. In an episode where everyone agrees to cook for Don Krieg's men, the other chefs point guns at him, and he seems entirely unfazed. But true to the style we've seen before, it's changed to giant knives in the anime. Still deadly, but not as cool. And Sanji is well read, especially about devil fruit users. Well, until the plot doesn't want him to be. You see, there's a scene where Sanji is unaware of a devil fruit user's inability to swim. That's a major plot hole considering that Sanji spent his life reading extensively about devil fruit users. It's a small mistake though and can be overlooked. What can't be overlooked is the fact that Sanji is modeled after popular American actor Steve Buscemi. Oda sure loves taking references from all over the world, huh? Another little fact about him is that Oda says that if Sanji became president, he would pass laws that would be preferential to women and discriminate against men. That cause all the men to revolt against him and get him taken out of office. He doesn't always make the worst decisions ever. Sanji is the third Straw Hat to try to unwillingly leave the Straw Hats after Nami and Robin for the greater good. And then there's some characters that don't have it great at all, like a scene in the manga where Luffy is seen picking his nose. In the next panel, we see Usopp with a suspiciously booger-shaped lump on his arm. Ew! Luffy isn't just gross though. We've already talked about his similarities with Goldie Roger, but it goes even further. There's an iconic scene where Luffy is asked where the next adventure waits, and instead of answering, he just points at the sky. This is an exact mirror of a gesture Goldie Roger does as well to show the next adventure. But that isn't all the fun facts we have about Luffy. Did you know that Luffy caused his own scar by stabbing under his eye? In an effort to look cool for Shanks' crew and prove that he can take any pain, Luffy deliberately stabs under his eye, causing his scar. That's a bit dark, but it gets darker. Did you know that the reason Luffy doesn't kill is not because of his morality? Oda explains that Luffy doesn't kill his opponents, he values dreams above all else, and he believes that letting someone see all their hopes and dreams being crushed is a much better punishment than a quick death. Another fun fact is that Luffy's mom and grandmother have never been shown in the anime or manga. Is there a specific reason for this? Probably not, but it's fun to theorize who she might be. Before we get lost talking about Luffy again, let's switch gears and talk about his second in command. Did you know that Zoro was originally supposed to be the first mate of Buggy the Clown? That would have been weird to see. I wonder how different the show would have been. Unlike Luffy's scar, we don't know how Zoro got the scar over his eye. There are many speculations and fan theories about what happened to his eye and how he got the scar, but I think it's probably just a design choice. Why? Because one-eyed scars look cool on a pirate. And Sonic the Hedgehog seemed to think so too, because they dedicated to replicate a One Piece cover art style as the cover of one of their comics. But in classic fandom fashion, they got bullied for it and forced to take it down. All the different pieces of media that take reference from One Piece, and it's Sonic that gets hate for it, that sounds exactly like the internet in a nutshell. I mean, if there's anything that deserves to be called out even a little bit, it's Gintama and their Dragon and Bleepiece. You read that right. In the show, the characters create a movie called Dragon and Bleepiece, which is just one big copyright issue waiting to happen. Of course, we all know it's just a gag, but still, this is way more blatant stealing than Sonic with a poster. Even My Little Pony references One Piece with a scene showing ponyfied One Piece characters and probably the only shot in history to ever show Zoro and Sanji getting along. There's also Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur who show a food truck owner that looks suspiciously identical to Sanji. Dr. Stone hops on the bandwagon too and references One Piece in a less direct stealing way. In a scene where Dr. Stone is thinking about mankind's biggest achievements, he reminisces about One Piece, which means, yes, Dr. Stone sees One Piece as one of mankind's greatest achievements. And that might not be an exaggeration either. In Haikyuu, Hinata Shoyo uses his love of One Piece to make friends in an entirely new country. That goes to show just how popular the manga is if it's bringing people together. The Scott Pilgrim comic also references One Piece with a picture of a familiar-looking pirate ship in Scott Pilgrim's finest hour. There's also a Going Merry poster in Natalie's room in the Infinite Sadness. That just makes Scott Pilgrim even cooler than it already is. One Piece isn't just uniting people, it's also saving lives. lives. In Inuyashiki, after the main character kills a girl's entire family, he asks her what her favorite anime is. As soon as she mentions One Piece, he gets excited and is eager to talk about the anime. She might still die later, but at least she's safe for now. It's pretty cool to see all the media inspired by One Piece. Too bad in 2007, Oda revealed when One Piece is gonna end. That's right. Although Oda has teased an ending for years now, one thing he's very clearly stated is the fact that One Piece will end once we see a character with an eye patch. And since we've never seen one, which is ironic considering that this is a pirate anime, we can only wait in anticipation till the day finally comes. Oda really does go the extra mile for One Piece. So much so that even while he was hospitalized during the Dressrosa saga, he had to call on Kishimoto to help him finish up the arc. That's right, the man, myth, and legend himself, creator of Naruto, has co-written an entire arc of One Piece before. Here's another fun fact for you. Did you know that Zoro is actually the only non-Devil Fruit user in the worst generation? Not just that, but Zoro is the only person Luffy has ever wanted to recruit before actually meeting, showing just how epic he is. Going back in time for a bit, did you know that Oda originally planned to finish the series in 2002? That means the original run of the series was only supposed to be 5 years. Well, nearly 3 decades later, we're still not done. In fact, a lot of things about One Piece were a lot different than what we have now. For one, One Piece was originally called Romance Dawn. That's interesting, because Oda has said himself that confirmed romantic relationships in the story is unlikely, since the series is a shonen aimed at young boys, and most little kids don't care about romance. That makes you wonder what the original tale of Luffy and the crew was supposed to be. Even more things that are different than intended. Did you know that the Lost Generation was created due to advice from Oda's editor? They believe that there should be other characters way stronger than Luffy to show that he still has a long way to go, no matter how powerful he may seem. Again, thank God Oda listens to his editors. That's also shown in the fact that Akainu's Devil Fruit has the most offensive power out of all the Devil Fruits, completely outclassing Luffy's in terms of raw destructive energy. In fact, Oda revealed that if Akainu was the main protagonist, he would find the One Piece in only 1 year. Alright, but all those are predictable facts. Here's one you didn't expect. Did you know that Luffy is an Olympic ambassador? That's right, Luffy along with some other memorable anime characters were ambassadors of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Here's another random one. Did you know that according to Oda, Lucky Roo ranked the fastest in the series in terms of combat speed? Speaking of Devil Fruits in general, did you know that they appear randomly? After a previous Devil Fruit user dies, any fruit closest to the deceased user at the time will immediately turn into a Devil Fruit. Another random fact, but did you know that Katakuri can break a donut world record? Katakuri, a commander of the Big Mom Pirates in One Piece, is usually seen eating donuts, and they're his main source of energy. With power like that, he would blow any competitive eater out of the water. This one's a bit more predictable, but did you know that One Piece holds a Guinness Book of World Records title? The manga series holds the Guinness World Record for the most copies of a comic book series released by a single author. The record was initially verified in 2015, when the series reached 77 volumes and sold over 320 million units, and it was renewed in 2022, after the series had sold 500 million copies globally. And to think this all started because Oda didn't want to get a job. That's right, Oda started as an artist to avoid getting a real job. I wonder what life would be like if Oda had decided to be an average salaryman instead. The anime scene would be so different. There are some things that show just how much One Piece has impacted people. It's so notable that there are real-life One Piece character memorials. 2 statues, Ace and Whitebeard, identical to the ones made in the show, were erected in honor of these characters and allowed fans in real life to come and pay their respects. Another random fun fact, but did you know that Law's sword is named after a Japanese mythological spirit? The real spirit is an entity that chases after any who wrongs it and will stop at nothing until they're dead. Pretty fitting if you ask me. Also, did you know that Big Mama has 85 children? That means she just kept giving birth over and over again all through the years. There's no wonder they call her Big Mama. Back to talking about the ending of One Piece. Oda has said that the end of One Piece will be the most touching moment in the entire show. That's a really high bar considering the incredibly emotional moments we've gotten so far. Oda originally didn't intend for Shanks to lose his arm. Once again, Editor Sun comes in to save the day. He advised Oda to make Shanks' lesson to Luffy have a lot more impact, and that's why it was decided that Shanks would lose his arm. Another change to the original concept was the fact that Chopper was supposed to be taller and look more like a dear man than a dear child. But Oda wanted Chopper to have a more unique character design and stand out more, and that's what led to the Chopper we see today. When asked what Devil Fruit he would like to bring to the real world, Oda said he would bring Robin's Fruit because it would allow him to sprout more arms that would allow him to draw more and draw faster. Imagine how many more chapters of One Piece would have come out by now if that was the case. Despite this though, Oda considers Buggy the Clown's Devil Fruit to be the best one in the series. I gotta say, there are probably stronger devil fruits out there. But hey, you can't really argue with the creator of the show, can ya? Here's a bit of trivia for you. If you take the chapter number of Luffy's first Gear 4 appearance, chapter 784, and reverse it, it'll be the first chapter of Luffy showing his Gear 2nd. That's probably just a coincidence, but it's still pretty cool. Here's one that isn't a coincidence. But prior to One Piece's creation, Oda worked on a series called Wanted that shares the same world as One Piece. The main character of Wanted was named Ryoma, who is the same Ryoma that's considered to be the best swordsman in the whole of One Piece. And that same Ryoma just happens to look a lot like Zoro. That leads into the theory that Zoro is an ancestor of Ryoma and continues to carry on his legacy. But there's another even wackier theory that Zoro is a failed clone of Ryoma made to recreate the feats of the late great swordsman in the modern world. If that's the case, then I don't see why he's considered a clone since he's done some pretty impressive things over the years. For one, Zoro was the first known person since Ryoma to kill a dragon, and they both killed it in the same way, with a large sword slice to the neck in mid-air. If that isn't enough, Zoro pulled it off again in his fight against King, managing to kill a flaming effigy of a dragon sent his way in the middle of the fight. Despite all this, Oda says Zoro is best represented by the flower Wisteria. It makes sense though, because the Wisteria flower represents undying loyalty and devotion till death, and we've seen time and time again how Zoro will risk everything, even his own life, to protect the lives of those he cares about. And even though Zoro has pulled off a lot of crazy feats in One Piece, Oda says that Buggy and Blackbeard are his favorite characters in the show. He did give Buggy the devil fruit powers he sees as the best and strongest in the entire show after all, so it's not too crazy to think that he'd like him the most. As for Blackbeard, I can't tell you the reason there. He may not have the most love from his creator, but we do know that Zoro is pretty well endowed. He's so huge in fact that he has a larger chest than Nami and Robin. That sounds pretty unreasonable, but it's 100% true. Zoro must really never skip his workouts. We've already talked about Zoro being a descendant of Shimotsuki Ryuma. But did you know that his name, Roronoa Zoro, comes from Ryuma's granddaughter marrying someone with the surname Roronoa? That's mostly speculation, but it would explain why he has a different last name than his ancestor. Did you also know that Oda intended to make Zoro a one-eyed character right from the start? That's right. To further support the fact that there really isn't a huge story behind Zoro's scar, Oda had always wanted to give Zoro a one-eyed character, but decided to hold off until after the time skip. I guess it was to really cement the sense of just how much time had passed. Also, did you notice something in Boruto that hints at the fact that he's a huge One Piece fan? In the pilot, when Boruto follows in his father's footsteps and spray paints on Ninja Rushmore, you see a very iconic symbol right at the top. This is the pirate symbol, and it's definitely a nod to One Piece. Back to the Straw Hats. Did you know that Robin is the only Straw Hat member besides Jinbei who's performed the Fishman karate technique? It's not the biggest flex in the series, but it's definitely a feat that shows that she's fast to pick up skills and a quick learner. And the characters definitely noticed too, because Robin had the highest starter bounty of all the Straw Hats. Her starter bounty was a whopping 79 million berries when she was just a child. She was suspected to be responsible for sinking 6 warships with her devil fruit powers after eating the flower fruit. However, some also say the real passion for her bounty was her ability to decipher poneglyphs. Here's a fact a bit on the weirder side, but in another SBS question to Oda, he confirmed that Robin can sprout copies of her breast just like other parts of her body on any part of her body that she wants. The application of this power, though, is non-existent. Like, what situation would that even be useful? Oda seriously gets the weirdest questions sometimes. But regardless, even with that, Chopper would still not be into her. That's because Chopper is still into female reindeer despite eating the human fruit. This later evolves to another humanoid deer. And that's about as far as it goes for him, though the thought of getting romantic with a human woman is just too much for him to handle. Jinbei is the first known fishman able to use Buso Shoko Haki. In fact, he's the first fishman seen using any form of Haki. Now, this doesn't mean that fishmen don't know how to use Haki at all. Haki comes from will, and the fishmen definitely have the will to fight, but Haki takes a long time to learn and master, and so does Fishman Karate. So if given the choice between the two, the answer is pretty obvious. Vivi's surname, Nefertari, is an ancient Egyptian name meaning the most beautiful or the most wonderful. While that does have some merit to her character, considering she is a princess and literal royalty, it's probably not to be taken directly to reference anything. And that's confirmed by Oda himself, who says that it's true that the Alabasta arc is based off of ancient Egypt, with a lot of Egyptian-inspired elements like the sandy landscape and the character designs. Even with all that, Oda admits that he didn't have any special reason for choosing Nefertari as Vivi's last name, and it's simply a coincidence that it happened to match up. In the SBS sketches for the Going Merry's layout, Oda included a note that states that the guys don't use the toilet very often. This is probably because the crew is just doing their business off the side of the boat into the freedom of the ocean. While that's pretty disgusting to think about, I can't say I wouldn't do the same. And there you have it, the fruits of my extensive research. A whole 201 facts about One Piece I'm sure you didn't know about. Even if you're a die-hard One Piece fan, there's absolutely no way you know every single thing listed in in this video. If you like the content, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'm off to scrub the internet for more obscure facts about the other popular anime series. Until then, thanks for watching.